Okay. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm going to start today off with a statistic. In the past year, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration issued over 35,000 out-of-service orders to new carriers, marking an all-time high. This surge reflects the significant increase in new carrier operating authorities since 2020. With an increase of new companies opening their operations, there is a higher chance that these new companies are unaware of the permits they actually need to operate to meet both state and federal regulations. So in episode 4 of our mini-series, The 5 Pieces of Compliance, our experts at VLC will share over 20 years of compliance knowledge and discuss fleet compliance. More specifically, tailoring your operating permits to your specific operations. We have our presenters today, Cheryl and Shannon, here to help guide us through some of the most common gaps our consultants run into when assisting carriers every day. Some quick housekeeping before we get started. We'll be having a Q&A at the end of our session, so please feel free to throw in any questions at any time in the chat so we can answer those at the end. If you see something in our webinar that you feel that you need to write down or take notes on, don't worry. We will be sending out a recording of the webinar and you will have access to it at any time. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop talking. I'm going to turn over to the experts to talk about fleet compliance, tailoring requirements to your operations.
Thanks, Emily. This is Cheryl, and I'm here with Shannon.
Hello.
I have been in the industry for over 24 years. And how long have you been here?
I've been with VLC for 2 years now.
And we were just talking this morning about, I don't think that the problems that carriers face with DOT compliance has really changed over the last couple of years or over the last 20 years. So being a consulting company, we deal with a lot of motor carriers and companies that need help in compliance, and we're here to guide them. And so we do a lot of uncovering and trying to be investigators on what do they need, what do they have, and how can we help?
Right. Our role as consultants can be to uncover what our clients really need and what they already have.
So let's take a look at some of the questions that we typically ask. Now, when you're consulting with a new carrier or even an existing one, there are a lot of questions that you ask. So let's go through a few of those.
Right. Very often our client usually comes to us and starts with a problem. And once we know their problem, we start asking discovery questions. So what type of freight do you transport? Are you hauling exempt commodities? Are you hauling hazmat or agriculture? Where do you operate? Are you operating only in one state as an intrastate operations, or are you going across state lines as interstate? And could you possibly be picking up cargo from ports, rail yards, or airports? What is the size of your fleet? What is your gross vehicle operating weight?
Shannon, why would it be important about their operating weight?
So your operating weight can tell me quite a few things. If you're operating over that 55,000 pounds, you will need a 2290 filed. If you're operating over 26,001 pounds, you could need IFTA if you're an interstate carrier. And also, if you're operating over 10,000 pounds, if you're an interstate carrier, you will need UCR filed. Are you previously registered for DOT authority or state permits? How many vehicles do you own? Are any of them leased? Are you expanding, merging, or acquiring? What tax filings have you completed? And last, what documents do you have?
What do you mean by that? Like, what kind of documents would they have that would be important to you?
So being able to look at documents that a client may already have, it shows me more of the full story. It can show me what can be missing. It also shows me existing progress, such as the 2290. Maybe it's already been filed, or maybe a title is in another company name. This really helps me to uncover things that may not have been mentioned within the conversation.
Interesting. So let's talk about if you're an interstate carrier, what does that actually mean? So we talked about that you're operating across state lines, or you're within state lines, but you're transporting from a port, from the rail yard, or from an airport. So that cargo is interstate cargo. So we like to look at it as looking at the cargo and where is it going. Whether you're an interstate or intrastate is dependent on that cargo, not necessarily where that truck is going. Does that make sense?
Yes, it follows the load.
And so an interstate carrier needs that DOT number. They possibly need that MC authority if they're in, like we said earlier, that if you're a private or haul exempt commodity, you may not need that authority. You definitely need permits if you're over that 26,000 pounds, IFTA, weight distance tax, IRP, and UCR. And then possibly, most likely, you're going to need an ELD.
Okay, let's talk about intrastate carriers. Those are operating within a single state. You will also need that DOT number. You're going to be subject to your state's permits. You could have registration, just regular state registration, and your state may also have something that is in our state called permanent fleet registration. And then you may or may not be subject and required to have an electronic logging device.
So when we take a look at the differences, they both types of operation need DOT. If you're an interstate, that's when you have that extra authority. You may or may not, depending on whether you're private or exempt. But you don't need that additional authority for an intrastate carrier. Interstate, you need those IFTA, IRP, and UCR. And intrastate is the some sort of state registration or the permanent fleet if it's available in your state. And then the state motor carrier permit. Most states have a state motor carrier permit that would be necessary. And then we haven't even talked about hazmat stuff. If you're a hazmat carrier and you're interstate, you're going to have that federal hazmat permits. And then depending on what states you're actually operating hazmat, you'll have to have state-specific permits. And then, of course, the ELD, you probably need that for sure when you're operating.
Okay, so recap the gaps. So oftentimes we discover that there are some gaps. So maybe they don't have all of their DOT authority. Cheryl, do you want to elaborate on what I mean by that?
Yeah, so when we first take on a client, we take a look at their MCS 150, and that's when you're looking at the safer site. You can see what type of operations and what FMCSA has you categorized as, right? So it could say that you're an interstate carrier and maybe you are for hire, but you also have private, you haul your own commodity. So you would have to have both of them selected, and maybe you only have one of them selected. So there, maybe you don't have all your cargo listed. So we take a look at the individual items on that MCS 150 and make sure that you have everything that you need that matches what you're telling us your operations are.
Right. Another thing that comes up often, a big gap, is the 2290. It might be missing entirely, or maybe it hasn't been filed yet. And then there are also exemptions. If you're under the 55,000 pound mark, you're exempt from filing that. And then you could also be due a refund for that for a vehicle that you've recently sold. Motor carrier permit, this is more often than not missed. Overlooking state permits definitely does come up. And then we do find that clients are also paying for unnecessary permits. And what I mean by that is they may have motor carrier permit that they pay for every year, but then they're also paying UCR, which it should be one or the other depending on your interstate and intrastate operations. Updating the carrier responsible for safety is another common gap. This is when we update the IRP account and the cab card to reflect the correct carrier that is responsible, which is usually the one who is operating the vehicle. CSA monitoring, another area that has become very important as your score may be approaching the national average. This triggers interventions from the FMCSA in the form of DOT audits and more inspections. Card program. I'm specifically talking about the Clean Truck Check. This is newly implemented card program for operations in California. Some clients still do not even know about this card program. It mandates operations in California, even if you're not terminaled in California.
So, about 18 years ago, we developed a tool called GW Connect for our own internal use as a company. And it is a SaaS centralized platform that manages all of the fleet operations for our customers. We decided from the very beginning that we wanted to open that and provide that tool to our customers, which we have done in the last couple of years. So now our customers can utilize this tool and manage all of their renewals, their 2290s. It's essentially keeping track of all the important dates. We added a fuel tax reporting module, which is really exciting to our customers, that they can now utilize this tool, file their own fuel tax reporting, and it just empowers them to be more in control of their fleet. It also has a lot of pre-filled DMV form, or DMV forms are pre-filled with the information, and a lot of applications are in there. So it is a great tool for our customers, like I said, to gain more control over their operations. So Shannon, you use GW Connect every day here. How has it simplified your life?
Yeah, I use Gateway every single day. I don't know that I could do my job without it. It helps me stay on top of important deadlines and renewals to ensure that they get done on time for our clients. There's also an internal communication hub that will send out auto emails to our clients, reminders that I am needing things. Also, the work orders retain important information like important DMV documents, and the auto-filled forms also help increase my efficiency. I'm not having to fill the same form out by hand over and over again.
Great. So it sounds like it's a really powerful tool.
Definitely.
We are going to open up the floor for some questions. So if anyone has any questions regarding the presentation today, or about anything that we talked about, please feel free to throw it in the Q&A or the chat. It should be at the top of your screen, and we'd be happy to answer any of those questions. Give everyone a little bit of time to go ahead and type something.
Okay, so I see a question here from Leanne. Why should I care if my DOT number is incorrectly listed? It's a great question. Not reflecting current information about your operations with the FMCSA could result in a violation. For example, if your operations road require you to have federal authority, but you don't, or if you are marked as an intrastate carrier, but you're actually involved in interstate commerce. Also know that CHP, motor carrier permit, UCR, they all communicate with the FMCSA, the safer.
Great. So you want everything to match, essentially. Cool. One question or story that, we kind of like to share about Gateway in particular is, a success story. Hearing firsthand about how powerful a software is probably the best way to know if it's something that you want to implement into your operations. And with GW Connect in particular, we sell the software to agents, just like VLC is a consulting agency, as well as customers to use. And back when COVID had everything shut down, a lot of agencies that had similar operations like us were also shutting down just because they weren't able to go into the office. They couldn't keep up with the mandates that were happening for basically not being allowed to leave your home. And we had a particular customer reach out to us kind of when things finally settled down and said, I would have not been able to keep my doors open if I did not have GW Connect. We would have had to shut down because of just the craziness. I mean, we all felt it. We all felt the pressure during COVID, and that was years ago, but it still affected people, and it's a really big topic to talk about. So hearing those success stories that a software kept someone in business, is a really powerful tool to bring to the market. One other question is, if you're not a California carrier, why should we care about CARB?
That's a really good question. And I feel like a lot of people who aren't California carriers don't really know about this yet, but out-of-state vehicles have the same requirements as California registered vehicles when it comes to the CARB Clean Truck Check. You're still subject to roadside inspections at border crossing, outside ports, rail yards throughout the state. CARB has implemented remote emissions monitoring devices and automated license plate readers. Those are deployed throughout the state to verify compliance. Also, CARB coordinates enforcement efforts with CHP and other public agencies to enhance enforcement efforts. CHP has the authority to conduct the Clean Truck Check inspections. Non-compliant vehicles may be denied entry to ports and rail yards as well.
Great. So it's affecting everyone. It's not just if your fleet is managed and kept in California. It's if you're passing through California, picking up a load in California, dropping off a load in California, you're subject to the CARB compliance laws.
Correct.
Great. Thanks. Well, if there's no more questions, we can go ahead and wrap up our webinar. So that wraps up episode 4 of our mini series, The 5 Pieces of Compliance. Thank you to Shannon and Cheryl from VLC for passing on over 20 years of compliance knowledge to our viewers today. Like I said before, the recording will be sent to your email inbox or watchable on our LinkedIn page to share a very important industry topic at those Thanksgiving tables next week. Be on the lookout for invitations to sign up for next month's webinar with our guest speakers from Whip Around. We will be tackling piece number 5 of our mini series, The 5 Pieces of Compliance, and wrapping up the year with an amazing topic that can save you time and money going into the new year. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Please stay safe, stay compliant, and keep driving success. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.